Coming up on Midco Motorsports, after a 2-week hiatus, Brian Brown returns to Knoxville with a bang. We'll look back at Blackjack's thrilling run. He's only going into his sophomore year in high school, but Tim Estenson is already a national champion. We'll introduce you to one of the region's top young drivers. All that plus highlights from the late model street stock stop at Nobles County and another edition of Shop Talk. The green flag drops down. Teams are already starting to get tuned up for the big days ahead at Knoxville Raceway. How's everybody doing? I'm Jay Elson, and this is Midco Motorsports. With the ASCS National Tour event, not to mention 410 and 360 Nationals creeping closer, the field for last week's show at Knoxville was especially deep. More on that in this week's A feature. 88 total cars checked in to start the night, with 24 qualifying for the 360's main event. Lap 13, Jamie Ball gets by his teammate Devin Klein for the lead. Next time around, contact made in the race for third. Ryan Giles gets into Sawyer Phillips. Both drivers able to keep it rolling, though, so they'd get to keep their spots after the yellow was ruled inadvertent. That was big because Phillips was challenging for the top spot on lap 17, and he gets it. In the end, he led just one lap, but it was the only one that mattered. Sawyer Phillips collects his second win of the season. If you thought that was good, get a load of the show put on by Ian Madsen and Brian Brown in the 410 feature. Lap 2, Brown takes the first shot. Madsen, though, able to counter. Blackjack at it again on lap 4, but he'd see the exact same result. They still weren't done. Same deal, one more time. Brown's persistence finally pays off on lap 7. This time, Madsen tries low to high. Brown cuts under him for the lead, and he'd hold on to it the rest of the way. Brown leads the final 12 laps en route to his third win of the year and the 36th for his career at Knoxville. Coming up, we are rolling at the Rivers with recaps of the weekly shows in West Fargo and Glendon. You're watching Midco Motorsports. A new year brought a new beginning for the annual Kingpin Clash. After several years as a Wissota Street Stock special, the event made the switch to IMCA sanctioning for 2017 and added a second night. After capturing the first leg Thursday at Norman County Raceway, Barnesville, Minnesota's Rob Van Mill looked to complete the sweep Friday at Red River Valley. They'd have to hurry to try and get things in ahead of the rain, though. Lap 1 of the hobby stock feature, Brandon Schmidt out in front, but he slides up and over in turn 4. The green flag did stay out, though, giving the lead to Nick Nelson. 3 to go. Tim Sheik throws it in hard to take that top spot away from Tim Church. Schmidt there as well. He gets into the 21. That ultimately causes Sheik to lose control. Schmidt would be charged with the caution, so Sheik does get to keep the lead, and he would hold off Church from there to pick up his third win in the last 5 weeks.
Well, it was the battle of the Tims with the 219 below us on and off, so it was a fun race. That's the most fun I had all year.
Big mess on the opening lap of the Sport Mods feature. Vince Jetvig loses control and collects a couple others in the process. The silver lining here is that everyone but Jetvig was able to continue. 4 laps to go. The 44D of Chris Van Mill gets by race leader Luke Johnson on the inside. Johnson hung with him for a bit, but Van Mill never relented. He puts the 44D in victory lane for the second time this season.
It took a lot of patience. I knew I could run through the middle. Turn 4 was slick at the beginning, so I just ran it in there and stayed in the middle to the bottom, and car hooked up.
Steven Kuntz led the first 10 laps of the Legends feature, so he couldn't see the run Josh Josrud was putting together behind him. You'd see him right here, though. The 18 completes the climb from 11th with an inside pass, and he would finish it off from there. Josrud collects his first win of the year in West Fargo. Unfortunately, that would be the last race of the night. The rain started falling shortly thereafter, washing out both those IMCA stock cars and the A modifieds. Weather much more accommodating Sunday at Buffalo River. A couple of the same players involved in the early part of the Hobby Stocks feature. Points leader Brandon Schmidt side by side with Tim Church when the 21 cuts a tire in turn 1. That would be it for Church. All Schmidt from there. The 219 cruises to its third win in 4 races in Glendon and adds a little extra cushion in the standings. Tim Estenson has been the guy to beat in the INAX Legends this year. He started 10th for this one, but he'd have the 14T up among the leaders by the halfway point. Dylan Johnson, though, able to fend him and Andrew Jokum off to gain some breathing room. A late caution would force a green-white checkered finish. Estenson gets a little jumpy on the restart, and it proves costly. The 14T disqualified. That gave Johnson one less guy to worry about, and he would take it home from there. Johnson just holds off Jokum for his first career victory. The Sport Mod feature was a battle of the best as the top 2 guys in the points went head-to-head. 3 laps in, Chris Van Mille takes the lead away from Scott Jacobson just like he did Friday. A couple of cautions would keep Van Mille from pulling away, and it gave Kelly Jacobson a shot. He'd get the 51 side-by-side with Van Mille for several laps, but the 44D eventually wins the fight. He beats Jacobson for the win, which was his 3rd in as many days.
And the wife's like, you can do 3 tonight. And I was like, don't get greedy. We're happy with 2. And it just worked out where the car was really good on the top and just took a couple laps there and was patient and was able to get on top and it stuck and just go from there.
No question about it, though, they saved the best finish of the night for last. What a wild race for the IMCA Modifieds. Lap 2, cars still bunched up when the 84 of Michael Johnson slips off the edge up top and fades to the back of the pack. Remember that moment. 10 to go now. Rob Van Mille catches up to the 21S of Jamie Schultz, and he's able to ride that high groove to the lead. Final lap, Rick Pavlicek making a hard charge, but just as he tracks Van Mille down, the 2 get tied up in turn 4. Caution was charged to the 17, so Van Mille keeps the lead. However, after the restart, the 4D would be in a fight to the finish yet again, only this time it's with Johnson. The 84 had worked its way all the way back through the field, and his efforts were rewarded. Johnson surges out of turn 4 to steal the win, and they don't get much sweeter than that.
I was a little happier that the second place guy chose the inside because I thought the opinion would be that was the faster lane and the leader would protect that. And if the leader protects the bottom, usually you have to open the top lane to yourself, and that's what happened.
Well, he's just 15 years old, but Tim Estenson already owns a national championship trophy. Brian Shawn will introduce us to one of our region's top young talents after this. Well, racing can be one of those sports that are timeless. Sometimes you see a 70-year-old racing against a teenager in the same class. Well, one new young gun that is raising some eyebrows on the INAX Legends scene is Fargo's Tim Estenson. He's already won a dozen races this season, beating drivers that are 2 to 3 times his age. Brian Shawn has his story in this week's Inside Track.
Tim Estenson looks like any other high school student in the halls at Fargo Davies High School. He plays hockey in the winter and spends time with his friends. But in the summer, the pace picks up as he races on dirt tracks across the region.
It's a little different. I'm not really the typical teen that just goes home and sits on their phone or plays games all the time.
Estenson got his driver's license just a few months back, but first got behind the wheel several years ago, thanks to his father, Mark.
Well, unfortunately, I brought him to a go-kart race, and previously in my life, I've raced go-karts through the years and a lot of other sporting things, and he got the bug, and it went on from there.
Estenson made the transition to Legends cars when he was just 13, after fellow driver Tony Brockhouse asked if he wanted to give it a try.
Up in Ada, he taught him how to shift it in the parking lot, put him out on the track, and he was turning laps that were just as fast as the guys that were on the track at the time.
That was a pretty big challenge, going from asphalt to dirt. You gotta be a little bit more patient on dirt because track changes and you gotta make different changes to your car.
Racing 3 to 4 nights a week means spending a lot of time not only on the road and in the driver's seat, but also in the shop.
I like hanging with friends and all and goofing off once in a while, but when it comes to racing, you gotta be focused and be on your game.
It's exciting that he is so enthused about coming over and getting things done. He knows his part, he knows what to do, gets it done, then it's playtime.
Last October, Estenson qualified for the INEX Legends 2016 Dirt World Championship in Maribel, Wisconsin. His performance locked him in as the Young Lion Dirt Points champion, finishing second in his class of the main event.
It's kind of amazing how good I'm doing as my age, but I just don't really let it get to me and I just like to do it, and it's really fun. So I like going out there every week and having fun every week with my dad and family.
Despite all the early success, there are still lessons to learn, some of them tougher than others.
I watch if there's guys in front of me, I watch back on the video to see how they got a better drive off the corner or if I made a mistake going in too hard.
He watches enough that I'm stepping back at certain times now and just letting him do his own thing, and he's taking a lot of the responsibility.
In row number 3, 14T of Tim Estenson.
Sometimes I tell him, if you would have done this, we could have done this, but deep down inside, it's the best thing in the world.
Estenson is showing no signs of slowing down this season, already collecting multiple victories at various tracks. Gratification for something he takes a lot of pride in.
Again, give it up for your winner, number 14, Tim Estenson.
Just the passion and seeing everybody smile, like my family and all the fans that are excited and little kids that get to see if I'm their favorite driver. Just really makes you happy when you see that.
That again was Brian Shawn reporting. Now Estenson is currently leading the points at Buffalo River, Norman County, and Red River Valley, where he's combined to win 13 of the 24 features. He's hoping to see similar success when he returns to Nationals this fall. Well, the Late Model Street Stock Touring Series made its first and only stop at Nobles County over the weekend. Highlights and post-race reactions coming up next. Well, since we last checked in on the Late Model Street Stock Touring Series, there's been a fairly significant development, and that is that someone finally found a way to beat Darren Cordles. The Rock Rapids, Iowa native scored 6 straight victories to start the season, but just one in the last 3 races heading into Saturday's show in Worthington, Minnesota. First and only appearance of the year for Cordles and company at Nobles County. The USRA Tuners led things off, and what a race it was. Lap 5, Luke Jackson completes the inside pass to take the lead away from Kent Miller. 2 trips later, Miller looks to answer, but the 6 stands its ground. Things really got interesting later on. Danny Vanderveen drives to the front as they hit the white flag, but the real battle happens in the final turn. Watch the finish. Awful tough to call, but it's Jackson that gets the nod. He was only in Worthington because his regular track had the night off, but he'd head back to Sioux City with a win. Rough night for Maya Christensen in the B-Mods. The 782 running second when he clips a tire on the inside of the track, and that would mark the end for him. Christensen shown the black flag after being charged with his second caution. When they got back to green, it was all Dave Kennedy. The 21K holds off a late charge from Cole Nordquist to get his first win in 5 tries at Nobles County. There'd be another first-time winner in the stock car class. It was a front-row fight early on with pole setter Roger Verdorn getting reeled in by Spencer Callis. The 20K completes the pass on lap 3, and from that point forward, everyone else was racing for second. Callis hadn't finished better than 5th in Worthington or Rock Rapids this season. Finally finds his way to victory lane. That's actually been a regular stop for hobby stock driver Chad Loneman this year, and he'd get back there yet again. The 117L took the lead away from Blake Ahrens a few laps in, and it was smooth sailing after that. Loneman makes it back-to-back wins in Worthington, giving him 6 overall this season. He currently stands 6th in the USRA's national hobby stock standings. That brought us to the night's main event. Trent Schroeder had control of the 11-car field for much of the race, but Corey Yai was creeping up behind. The 64 works its way past the 83X of Briley Gow for the runner-up spot, then starts to zero in on that 31. A couple laps later, Yai starts the charge in turn 3, but a caution stops him short. You try again 2 restarts later, same exact spot, only this time, Yai gets it done. Final lap now, Schroeder still in pursuit, but he spins in turn 2, and that would seal it. Since the white flag was out, the race was over. The yellow checkered gives the win to Yai, while Cordles settled for second.
I'm going to take this one and enjoy it for sure, because it's been a drought for us, but hopefully there's more to follow. The trend for myself and my guys, that we get one and we usually get a couple more.
Back in South Dakota, folks in Watertown rounded out the weekend at Casino Speedway. Pick things up with the Wissota Street Stocks. Andy Rosso won last week, and he had his 99 car dialed in once again. A few laps in, Rosso, who started 5th, snatches the lead away from pole setter Trajan Schmidt. Later, good race for second as the 16 of Chad Wilmot and the 10B of Scott Borstad work through traffic. Borstad wins the battle off turn 3, but second was as far as he would climb. Rosso just too strong as he closes the deal for his second win in as many weeks.
I actually won last week, and that was my first ever feature win here in 5 years. If you would have told me that it was going to take me 5 years to get my first and then I was going to go back-to-back, I would have told you you're crazy, but I guess crazier things do happen.
To the Midwest Modifieds, Nick Barger having some panel issues on that 14N early on. He'd end up finishing 12th. No such issues up front. Scott Hansen chases down pole setter Ryan Dam for the lead. Dam would ultimately fall back to 6th, but Hansen wouldn't look back. He rolls on for his first win in Watertown since May 7th. Things were much more competitive for the super stocks, although one guy did take full control early. Jeremy North pilots the 20 past Blake Whitlock for the lead. Shane Brick coming on strong in the 14, though. He gets past the 71 of Trevor Nelson for second. And on the final lap, Brick on the inside now. North gets a little too high, and that's all it took. Brick sneaks by and steals the win, which was his first of the season at Casino.
I seen that he pushed a little bit, and that's about all it took, and I knew I could gain, a little distance there, so I took advantage of his misfortune, so did my best, and I guess it worked out.
Last but not least were those ever-popular Wissota late models. David McDonald started 4th for this one, but the 52X uses a good run on the bottom to take the top spot away from Blake Swenson. Later, Swenson tried to hold on to 2nd, but Scott Ward wasn't having it. None of that mattered, though, because no one was going to take this one away from McDonald. He gets the victory, followed by Chad Becker and Ward.
Yeah, I knew I was watching the leaderboard. I knew who was coming, and I knew they were coming hard, and I had to keep rolling, but just lucky it wasn't, would look a little better than 3 laps shorter, and I'm glad it wasn't 3 laps longer.
It's designed to be a quick fix, but the front end on a sprint car still needs to be handled with care. We'll take a closer look at that when we come back. The front end on a sprint car is one of the most complicated quick fixes in racing. One wrong move there can set you up for an extremely difficult and frustrating night at the racetrack. Brian Shawn and Chris Schierick shed some light on suspension in this week's edition of Shop Talk.
Back for more Shop Talk here in Mark Dobmeyer's shop with Chris Schierick, our Midco SN racing analyst, and we're focusing a little bit on the front end of the race car where you got some of the suspension, and this is kind of a unique situation, Chris, because this is a pretty touchy subject. All this stuff, it works together, but it doesn't take long to replace all these parts in case you have an incident, so to speak.
Yes, you are correct there. So we have the shocks, and torsion bars. And that's really the suspension. The torsion bars, they'll go up and down. That's basically what keeps the car where it is. Your shocks will control how fast up and down that torsion bar will work. Like you mentioned, the components, how they change out easily. We have radius rods here, That keeps it up and down. You can move that forward and back. Those are just one bolt there, one bolt there. They come out. To take a whole front end out and put a whole new front end in takes 30 seconds to a minute. A whole front end change. So when a driver crashes, they can come into the pits. 90 seconds later, they're pushing back out for, for the next race or to finish out that race.
And I know you talked about all the pieces, but there's a lot of tweaks that have to go into this, because when you're trying to drive a car, whether it's tight, loose, something doesn't feel right, they're pretty touchy, aren't they?
They are. They are. You have torsion stops. You have torsion stops here. What they will do, you put them on the end of the bar here, and you can adjust them. A half a turn will put more weight. It's basically weight jacking. You'll put more weight if you turn it around in. It'll go weight jacking on the one side of the car. This is huge. This one piece is huge. You do a half a turn, that'll throw your whole car off. You do a full turn, and it'll really throw the car off, or it'll make the car that much better.
So it is kind of a guessing game as a driver now. It just takes experience and everything, and as a team, it gets experience kind of understanding each track, each surface, what the track is doing, getting dry, getting wet, where to run on the track. All that factors into what you're doing, what you were just talking about, right?
Yes, and you can change the front bars, you can change the rear suspension. It's not just on the front end. You can do a half a turn on the front, you can do a half a turn on the back. There's so many different little minor tweaks that you can do for these cars, and one wrong move, that'll cost you the race. One right move, that'll win you the race.
Biggest difference between going forward and backward outside of the engine is making sure you get this part right.
One little part, yep.
That's Chris Schierick, that's Shop Talk, talking on the suspension on sprint cars.
All right, thanks, fellas. That is our time for this week. For Brian, Sean, Greg Ankers, and our producer, Max Jensen, I am Jay Elson. We'll see you next time.